Orlando Anderson is absolutely, positively the murderer of Tupac Shakur. The key figures in the murders of Biggie and Tupac are, of course, their labels, headed by Sean Combs, which is Bad Boy, Biggie's label, and Suge Knight, which is Death Row, Tupac's label. If you look at it like a pyramid and you had Bad Boy Records with Sean Combs and Death Row Records with Suge Knight, and then beneath them was their rappers, Biggie and Tupac, and then beneath them was their entourages or gang associates, which were the Crips and the Bloods. Sean Combs was associated back in New York with a high-level drug dealer named Eric Martin. He was known as Zip. Well, Zip was getting his cocaine and his PCP from a West Coast gang member who was a Crip named L.A.P.D. L.A.P.D's nephew is Orlando Anderson. He's the individual that got into a fight with Tupac Shakur the night that Tupac was shot. Orlando Anderson's the one that was in the backseat of the white Cadillac that pulled up alongside and shot Tupac. So you've got Combs, Martin, L.A.P.D, who was also in that white Cadillac and had secured the gun, gave it to his nephew, and his nephew shot and killed Tupac. In 1998, Orlando Anderson was trying to collect a drug debt. He was in Compton at a car wash, and he got into a confrontation where guns were pulled out, a shooting, an exchange of gunfire, and Orlando Anderson was killed at that time in 1998. Well, for Sean Combs, I mean, what are his choices really? I mean, is he going to come out and confess to his association with the killers of Tupac Shakur? I mean, that would be professional suicide. He doesn't have a lot of choice but to try to distance himself from the facts as they are. But you also have to understand Combs' position at the time. And it's very understandable, this sense of fear and dread and desperation that he was facing, because he knew that Suge Knight and Suge Knight's goon squad, his gang member associates, were after Combs. They held him responsible for the murder of one of Suge Knight's best friends in Atlanta, a guy named Jake Robles. So this conflict just continued to fuel itself. Combs saw that it wasn't going to be resolved peacefully, and he protected himself by affiliating with these Crip gang members, and they took upon themselves to then kill Tupac Shakur. Biggie was killed by an associate of Suge Knight's. He hired a guy named Poochie to track down Biggie at the Peterson Auto Museum in March of 1997 and wait for him outside, and he pulled alongside and shot into the side of the car and killing Biggie. Poochie was a blood gang member from Compton, well known to Suge Knight, well known to those in Suge Knight's circle. Poochie was a known gunman, a known violent gang member, and he was the perfect guy to recruit for that job. We have the confession of a co-conspirator that points directly at Poochie. We had a history of knowledge of Poochie's association with Suge Knight, but when this intermediary came to our attention, there's a girl that we call her Teresa Swan. She was a baby mama to Suge Knight. She identified Poochie as the person that had been solicited to do the murder, provided other details that were only known to law enforcement, and said that Suge Knight had solicited it from jail. In 2002, he's riding his motorcycle up Central Avenue. A gunman pulls up behind him and shoots him 10 times in the back and kills him, and so now Poochie's dead. So by the time we get the information about Poochie from the co-conspirator, he's no longer chargeable either, much like Orlando Anderson. It seems that fate has caught up with Suge Knight. A couple years ago, he ran over a guy at a burger stand in Compton, killing him, a guy named Terry Carter, and Suge was charged with that murder and was sentenced to 28 years in prison.